trying to piece this together on top of the fact about that time, Vernon Jordan got shot here, and Harvester decided to leave, and we had this little flood. And I'll tell you, when I knew that the absolute certainty that we had to solve this problem, that we had to build Headwaters Park, I mean, without a doubt in my mind. And it was from a gentleman who was sitting right about here, Steve Poinsett. Some of you may have known Steve. He had Poinsett Autos out here. And Steve was a longtime friend of mine, and as were his friends. And there wasn't a roof like this, and there wasn't a building like that. And Steve could look out of his window right at the mayor's office. And I could look out of my office right at Steve's place. And the waters of 82 began to climb. And they went over the barriers over Nebraska, and that went underwater. And over at the Pemberton Dike, it began to rise, and here in what's now the headwaters, it began to rise too. As you looked out there, Steve's land was a little higher than the rest, but not much. And the water began to come in. And as it came in, you could see it filling. And you may remember we divided as a city into islands. I mean, there were places you couldn't drive through. You couldn't go up Spy Run. You couldn't go across this bridge. And Steve's out there with all of his cars, and he calls me. He says, "Win, I need some sandbags." I said, "Steve, we're really doing neighborhoods first, people's houses." He said, "Well, it's really getting high out here." And I'm looking out the window, and I can see him in his window over there. And sure enough, I said, but there's nothing but water all around him. I mean, there's no hope. There's no. I said, "Steve, part of a mayor's job is to say no." And I have to tell you, we don't have enough sandbags. He said, "You can't leave me here. This is just terrible. We've been a local institution for 50 years or so." And I said, "Well, Steve, I'm looking out the window." He said, "I know you are. I can see you out there." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "You got to send out sandbags." He said, "Well, let me see what we can do." And we kept trying to find enough sandbags. Some of you may remember, we bought sandbags from everybody this side of the Mississippi. I mean, we sent them up to Detroit. We sent trucks. And we filled nearly 1 million sandbags. And Paul Harvey came to downtown, and Ronald Reagan came to town. It was wonderful, but we didn't have enough sandbags. And so I finally called him and said, we can get you some. And I hear this cranking in the background. I said, "Steve, what's that noise?" And he says, "Well, we got these chains where we're lifting our computer." In those days, they weren't these little things we carry around like this. I mean, they were big mainframes. And I said, what do you mean you're lifting those computers?" He said, "We're going to chain them to the ceiling so that they won't go underwater." He said, "We're moving our desks too." And I said, "Well, isn't there a better way?" And he said, "I don't think we can drive out. I think the water's too deep." I said, "Well, okay, Steve." And so they did that, and time went on, and we couldn't get any sandbags. And finally I get this phone call, and he says, "Can you send a boat?" So we went over and took some of them out of there. But it was very clear to me after that there was no solution to this other than a Headwaters Park that dealt with the flood and utilized all of the activity that we could create here. And I should tell you, Steve understood how bad that was and did try to move it and went on too. We then began to we had pulled together people before. We met at the Chamber of Commerce, had some presentations, had some great displays. If you ever met Eric Kuhn, he had probably the best demonstration of what all to do. This was one that did not work here, but at the confluence of the rivers, he had put together one that had cotton balls that were water spouts floating shooting into the middle of it quite high, so that anybody that drove through had a focal point for Fort Wayne. I said, I don't think shooting spouts are probably going to be what we can sell at the Chamber of Commerce, Eric. And so he went to work and came back with some other plans, and they were good. And Ian will tell you about those. But after we put these plans together, got local groups together, it was clear to me that this was going to take some additional help, some state help. And you may not remember this, but in my time as mayor, the state didn't really go out of their way to help me. No, they didn't. And I don't say this disparagingly in any fashion. They're a number here of my good friends. But in the 8 years I lived I was the mayor. Do you know how many state legislators lived in the city of Fort Wayne? One for a little while. That was it. The number that were at my party in those 8 years was 0. So, what do I need? I need Ian Rowland and Dan Seitz. I need somebody to go down and work on these programs, because it won't happen unless it's bipartisan and comprehensive and really nonpartisan. And they did that, and they'll come to those stories too as to how it came together. But it shows that in Fort Wayne, when there is a crisis, and that flood was a crisis that accentuated things and punctuated it, and when there's a goal that we agree upon that will help the community, we get things done. Now, we may not be the fastest in town, just because it took 26 years or 20 years, or the fastest in the country, but we've done it right. And there is a reason why we win All-America City Awards. We won them 3 times now. We're one of the finest and most livable city, and one of the finest park systems in the city. We can thank Al Mole and his predecessors for that too. And we are able to put together, for a middle-sized community, probably the best quality of life of any place. And as I looked at a number of other cities of size to ours, by almost every standard, we are at the tops. We're not going to be a Chicago or a San Francisco, but we are going to be and continue to be a great middle-sized city. And your help has made that possible. As we sit here and enjoy it tonight, I want to tell you, I enjoy this just as much as I'm going to enjoy my true class reunion in a couple weeks. Thank you.